all mother session beings, especially those enemies they hate, obstructors who harm, and those who create obstacles on paths to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddha. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering, and swiftly I would establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dang waje pedrano paraje pegeng. Tarapadang tam chekin pe bardo chopar je patam chem kitso jepem manam kadanyam pestam shentam chendewadang Dognala dangdra dodolana me payang dang parm Zope chakchum rinpoche so parajam. Thus until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. I can never get this right, so I'll try. Deshe do song ma ge ki bar do long nam ye som ge wa la kol. Ma she bar do long nam ye som ge wa la kol. Do de ring ne song te ne ma sang da sam gi bar do long nam ye som ge wa la kol. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Vedas. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the nobles, Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Edams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the nobles, Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Den chen so wa dang yu parashe pe pel den lam am dam pa nam lam kyab so che om ye dam kil kore gil la song nam la kyab so che om sangye chon den den nam la kyab so che om Dam pe chonam la kyam so che om. Pag pe gendo nam la kyam so che om. Pa o kandro cho kyong song men so ye shem ke che dang. Dem pa nam lam kyam so che om. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embrace the enlightened mind and progress on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embrace the enlightened mind and progress on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Jangcho Nyingpo Rache Kiban Sangye Namla Kyam Chi Chodang Jangchub Senpai Zogleng Denshin Kyam Chi Jetara Nongye Denshe Kim Jangchub Tugim Kepadam Jangchub Sempela Padam Dedagrinshin Nepantar Deshin Drola Pendondum Jagchub Semni Kejishin Deshin Doni Lapadam Rimpa Shendo Laparajim. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodam Sangye Chonam Lam Chakshu Barado Dagni Kyamsu Shem Dagi Jinso Gipe Sonam Kim Drola Penchere Sangye Drupara Sho. May all Mother Sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the cause of the suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother Sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadanyam pesem chantam chende wadam dewe yudam din para jura ching dognala chi yudam drala wara jura ching Dognala me pede wadam midrala wara jura ching Yering chang dang ye dang drala wei tang nam la ne para jura ching. We're doing the 100 syllable purification?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. Om Vajrasava Samayam. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind, heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Reveal in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus, I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasava Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind, heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Reveal in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasava Samaya Manupaya Vajrasava Tenopa Tirtadiro Mebhawa Sutokayu Mebhawa Supokayu Mebhawa Anrakta me bhavam, sarva siddhi me prayatsa, sarva karma sitsa me, sitsan shriyan kuru hum. Ha 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 ho, Bhagavan, sarva tathagata, vajramame munsa vajibhawa, mahasamaya sato ah.
Very good. Thank you. The melodies are getting very good.
Thank you.
Okay. So any questions, comments on what we've been talking about, the aspects of the five path of Mahamudra? Okay. So just as a refresher to get our mind stream, that we've been talking about the fivefold path of Mahamudra. Mahamudra is the meditation, is the state of meditation that we become the embodiment of, that we take with us as we get up off the cushion. It becomes something that we now, it is a part of our lives. It's our lifestyle to be in a Mahamudra. And we do the practice to refresh ourselves with the Mahamudra meditation, with the Mahamudra mindfulness. So we begin by doing the first path, which is the path of accumulation, where we're accumulating loving compassion, joy, and equanimity, bodhicitta, the qualities of the enlightened being. So is the first part, the path of accumulation. And then the next part is the path of application, which is the deity yoga. How do we apply that? How do we now actualize that the accumulation, the bodhicitta? Well, our examples are the perfect Buddhas. So the Buddhas of the five Buddha families, the Bodhisattvas, the 8 great Bodhisattvas, these are our exemplars. So through the deity yoga, we recognize that these deities are within ourselves and how it is that we bring them up and the wisdom that comes along with that, the skillful means that comes with that, the confidence that comes with that. So that's the second part, is the path of application and being able to apply that for ourselves and in our relationships with others. So by that we help others. So we become radiant, we become luminous. And others may perceive that. They don't see the light per se, like we might see a bright light that turns on in the room or something like that. But there is an awareness, there is a sense that other people might pick up and that we might be exuding. We realize that we have that light within ourselves. And then comes the path of insight. As we are doing this, as we become good, adept at being the deity, that the insight, these wisdoms come up, these awarenesses come up, and how to deal with these things and how to manage things. And certain things may come up, maybe what seemed to be the first time. And, it seems like, well, what are we going to do with this? But then as we center ourselves, keep ourselves centered, and we rely on the teachings, we rely on the practices, and we go through step by step, the solution to whatever the confusion is, whatever the problem is, gets worked out through that. Because this wisdom is there. Now we've opened up the channel to be able to allow that wisdom to come up. And so in the beginning, we may surprise ourselves about how profound it is and that how we can do this. But after a while, it becomes very easy, flows very naturally, and we gain the confidence in doing that. So this is the path of insight. This is the guru yoga, realizing the guru, the teacher, is within ourselves, and that's what we're recognizing. And then comes the meditation part, which is the Mahamudra meditation. And this is the very simple letting go. We talked about this at length. We talked about the different practices, the absorption, the formlesses, the practicing beyond the world. So we delineated what these things were. And all this was kind of based, it comes back to where we started when we talked about the Four Noble Truths, and in particular the Eightfold Path, which is the fourth part of the Four Noble Truths. So the Eightfold Path of perfect view, perfect conception, perfect speech, perfect action, perfect livelihood, perfect effort, perfect mindfulness, and perfect absorption. So when we when we looked at this for the first time, it was looking at the right view, the right perception, and so on. Now we've gotten to the point where it's the perfect. We now know how to really actualize this, to manage this within our lives, and so on. So it's still a practice, but now we have greater confidence, we have greater experience with it. So now we're in the meditation, and we are feeling very clear, the clear light. You know, we've had insight, we've had awareness, we've had skillful means bring this all to bear, and we're feeling very good, and we're beyond, you know, just the feeling part of this. It's like we've gotten beyond the joy of this. It just becomes very, very simple, becomes very ordinary for us to be like this. And so this is a sign of accomplishment. This is a sign of achievement, of having done this, that it begins to feel normal, it becomes natural to us. And if we were to go backwards, it would be abhorrent to us. That would be extraordinary, you know. And when we meet people who are confused and not aware of what the Mahamudra is, and to see them suffering and so on, we have great compassion for them, and we want to be able to help them in any way we can. And the best way, the fundamental way we can do is just to radiate our wisdom, our skillful means, our Mahamudra out to them. So now we have this meditation, we come back into our normal state, so to speak, but we brought this Mahamudra with us, and now it's time for the path of perfection. So what this means is, it says here, why is it called the path of perfection? Because the training is perfected and one enters the city of nirvana. So nirvana is being in this blissful state of mind, being in this awareness of emptiness of all things, no attachment, no aversions, this nirvana. However, it is temporary. We're still breathing. We're still a human being, but we now have this awareness. We have this mindfulness that we might not have had before, but now we have. So this is the perfection that we're talking about of this city of nirvana. And we take this with us where we go. So we talk about the Buddha field, you know, so now this Buddha field has become this city of nirvana for ourselves. So like wherever we go, we're taking it with us. So our activity now is to be able to dedicate this to all beings. That what we are doing, that we are exuding this light, we are radiating this light for the benefit of others, and dedicating this to them so that they may recognize it and see it. So we're taking on this responsibility of sharing this. You know, this is one of the hallmarks of the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is doing this primarily for the benefit of others. And the Bodhisattva is very aware of that they are doing this for the benefit of others. And they are putting themselves off or second, or they're not thinking about oneself. They're doing it for other beings. So an example might be that you have something that you want to do, like say there's a particular practice that you want to do, and you know it's going to take you several months to get into this practice and to study it, to memorize it, and so on, and start doing the practice. But then you have people that are talking to you and asking you for advice and asking you to do things and so on. And you say, okay, I can't do both of these things. I can't do the thing that I really want to do, but I'm going to put that off, and I'm going to help these other beings as much as I can, because that's my job. That's what I do as a bodhisattva. So we put ourselves up. And by doing what we need to be doing for others, we find that many times that whatever benefit we were looking for the things that we were putting off, we find that we are gaining through this doing for other people. So we do this joyously, we do this happily. So this is the path of perfection, of not being disturbed, of having unimpededness. The qualities of Mahamudra are clarity, emptiness, and unimpededness. That it doesn't matter what we're doing. We can do anything and we still maintain our clarity. We still maintain our mindfulness of emptiness. And that we see the emptiness is pervasive. So there's nothing for us to feel unimpeded about. There's no blockages because we see everything is empty. And the clarity, we recognize that everything is clear because we have the mindfulness to be able to be aware of all of this. So these three things are the characteristics of the Mahamudra. So it says here, yes.
It was clarity, emptiness, and
unimpededness. Unimpededness. So you'll see many different words that are used for that, and we'll pick some up here. But it means no blockages, no obstacles. Okay, so it says here that after the Vajra-like absorption, one actualizes the nature of awareness, the awareness of exhaustion, and the awareness of the unborn. So these are qualities that come out of the Mahamudra. So in the Mahamudra, if you remember, we talked about the four absorptions that were in the meditation stage. And then we talked about the meditative stage of the four formlessnesses. So now we're bringing this with us into the path of perfection. And it says that one actualizes the nature of awareness. We actualize it, that we're using it, that we become that activity of awareness. We see things, we recognize things, we understand things. And the awareness of exhaustion, we realize that we have gotten here because we have exhausted all the other things that were blocking us up, that all these intellectual processes, all these dogmas, all these doctrines, all these things that we were going through, we've exhausted all of them. Some of those things we have just cut off because we found them to be non-productive. We found them to result in attachments and aversions. We found them to be causing negative karma. So we cut them off. But some of those things we have utilized to the point that now we become the masters of those things and we no longer need those things. So we've exhausted their usefulness for us. However, if we need to, we can go back to them. We haven't dismissed them, we haven't gotten rid of them, but we've exhausted all what they bring for us. So we're aware of that. And then the awareness of the unborn. So the awareness of the unborn is the absolute nature. That which we didn't know what it was, we still can't express it because it is beyond human capability to be able to express it. But what we become is an exemplar of that, like the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, that we begin to live that. We begin to live more simply. We begin to live more quietly. We begin to just be in a state of blissfulness. So, the characterization of this is just the image of of the Buddha, sitting in the meditation position with his eyes just slightly open, just very peaceful. The body is completely at balance, completely rested. There's no monkey mind jumping around from one thing to another. And the heart is just open with bodhicitta, ready to help all beings, envy beings, with whatever needs to be done through the body, speech, and mind of this awareness. So this is the awareness of the unborn, this unborn nature. We become now part of that. We become like a conduit for this just flowing through us. So this is called the Vajra-like absorption of the Mahamudra. So this Vajra-like absorption is the state at the edge of the path of meditation and is included in the preparation and unobstructed stages. This absorption is also called Vajra-like because, so now it's on the edge of the meditation. We've gone through the meditation. Now we're on the trailing edge of the meditation. You know, there's a leading edge when you're coming in, then you're in the midst of it, and then there's this trailing edge now where it's mutable, where it's flowing out and so on. So it's flowing into us and we become, you know, like the rays of the sunshine, the rays of the Mahamudra. So this absorption is called Vajra-like because it is unobstructed or unimpeded. It is hard because it cannot be destroyed by obscurations. It's hard. It can't be destroyed by obscurations. It can't be worn down like the wind, you know, beating against the sandstone, you know, for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, the wind, you know, wears down the sandstone. But this absorption doesn't have that. It's too hard. It's immune to that. It's stable. It cannot be shaken by discursive, rambling thoughts. So we can, you know, our mind can kind of wander and we can start looking at different aspects, looking at these different things and so on, but the stability is still there. And we can say to ourselves, you know, I'm just jumping around looking at these different discursive expressions of this nature, but the stability is there. And all I got to do is just rest, just be quiet, just relax. And that's a practice unto itself, because, you know, when we attain this level, then, you know, we might have these ideas. Whoa, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this with that, because you feel like you've got this power. But then you realize the best thing to do is just rest, just be quiet, just be peaceful. So this is stable. Then it says of one taste, because everything is of one taste. Everything seems the same. Everything is just like one taste. It's like if everything you eat just all tastes the same, all the same taste. So all life becomes like that. Everything that we encounter, all our, whatever might be have thought of as be trouble, becomes easy. Whatever was easy is for some other people could be trouble. We could see it as it was before. Everything becomes one taste. We just see it all as this continuum. Everything's in balance. Everything's in harmony. And then everything is all pervasive. It obscures, it observes the suchness of all knowledge. So this Vajra-like, because it is all pervasive, it observes the suchness of all knowledge, that we see everything in its natural state. Well, this is the way it is. This is the suchness of everything. It's just like this. It's the suchness or the thatness. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the thatness. Everything is like that. Everything is such like this. And you begin to see all that, because now the two truths have all become, you know, together. We begin to see the phenomenal nature as this natural suchness. We still maintain, we still abide in the absolute nature, but now we are exercising it. We are actualizing it in the phenomenal realm, in the dualistic relative realm. So these 5 qualities are the Vajra-like qualities. So we can't say exactly what this Mahamudra is like. We can't say exactly what this perfection is like, but we can say it's like this. And this is how we become more and more familiar with it, because we're talking to ourselves, we're studying this ourselves, we're becoming familiar with this ourselves. But then as we move about and do things with other people and so on, we are exercising this. We don't have to tell them about it. We don't have to say, oh, well, this is what I'm doing because of my Mahamudra practice or something like that. They're not going to understand, but you can recognize it that way. And over time, you build more and more confidence. Now, does this come in the next month? Does this come in the next 6 months? Does this come in the next year? Not likely. But you have this text and you begin to read this, and you need to go through the progression. You can't just jump right to the top. You got to remember the progression, and you got to honor that progression, and you have to respect that, and you have to use that. And that's what gives you the stability, and that's what gives you the absorption, what it yields and so on. But we can refresh our memory with this. And the more and more we do it, the more stable it becomes. These Vajra-like qualities become more apparent in our lives. Does this make some sense? Can you follow this? I mean, have you had any experience with this? Anybody? You know, as you do practice, and whether it's chanting or something like that, Adrian?
Yeah, I do. And I want to ask you. I guess some of the things that you were talking about, the unobstructed, heart stable, of one taste, all pervasive. Part of the practices of the deities that we're doing are actually like some of the symbols, right, of the deities, the implements they're wearing. They symbolize some of this stuff. Is that right? Is that correct to say?
Absolutely. Yeah, these implements, we learn a lot from the implements. And when we're doing the practices, we can hold those implements, even if we're just imagining that we're holding them and saying the mantras and so on. Very powerful. Yes, they are the actuators of the enlightened activities. The hold the Vajra, is very powerful. Right. The Vajra, the bell, very powerful. And all the other different things that we have, the mala beads, using the mala beads, all these things are helping us to build up our confidence. And yes, I've got this power. I am the Buddha.
Can you go a little bit more into like, number 4 of one taste, everything is with one taste. Is it talking about the dharmas of being of one taste? I found this phrase in, practicing the Vajrayogini sadhana. And I think the language there was saying that her one body symbolizes that all dharmas are of one taste. So what does that exactly mean?
And all the dharmas, I think, that's being expressed in that particular part right there is dharmas with a lowercase d. That all pathways, not just the Buddha Dharma, that's pretty obvious, but that all dharmas, the lowercase, all pathways, all become the same. The Dharma, the Buddha Dharma is just one of those, which is the one that leads to enlightenment. All the other ones just lead to chaos, lead to confusion and so on. But we just see them all as just pathways. And until we get to the point of exhaustion, when we exhaust them all, then we don't need them anymore. So that's So we, at that point, then everything becomes one taste. It all becomes the same. You know, like you can't rock me off of my off of my off of my mindfulness of Mahamudra. I see everything as Dharma. I see everything as Mahamudra. I see everything in balance. I see everything as bodhicitta. I see everything as the deity. I see everything as Buddha. So the one taste is just a way of saying, if you had a whole, banquet of food in front of you, and you went from one end of the banquet table to the other and just sampled everything, and it all tastes the same. It's all food. It all has nutrition, but it just all has the same taste. So it's a very good, what would you call it? Metaphor.
Mhm.
And like all of this, it's based on experience. So if you haven't had the experience, don't despair. Just keep on practicing, and the experience will come. If you stop practicing because you get despondent and feel like, oh, it's not happening, then you won't get it. You're assured of that. But if you keep practicing, then the experience will come. When the purity is there, all of a sudden it will happen. When we become the proper vessel, when we rid ourselves of the expectation, then all of a sudden it's there. And that brings to mind, when we talk about meditation, what is meditation? Well, meditation, when we say we're going to meditate, we sit down and we go through this progression. We go through this process. First, we get into a comfortable body position. And then that body position becomes very, very balanced. And we don't have to think about our body position. It's very rested, very natural. And then we begin to focus our intellectual mind on our mantra, on our breathing, something like that, onto, doing the practice, whatever that is, we're focusing it. And it becomes our contemplation and so on. And then it becomes rested. And then when the body becomes rested, the physical and the intellect becomes rested, then what happens is the meditation comes by itself. The meditation comes when there's no effort being made. If we're trying to make the effort come, we're being mindful of that. We're trying to make that happen. We're trying to do something with our mind, with our intellectual mind. But the meditation, the real meditation, the Mahamudra, comes when you're not trying. Then all of a sudden it's there. But you don't realize that it's there until after you come out of it. Then you say, oh, I was there. It happened. What brought me out? Because I had some thought. Something happened. You're in that meditation. You're in that mindfulness. You're in that Mahamudra, and maybe your foot goes to sleep, and you can feel your foot going to sleep. Or maybe the phone rings, or you hear a horn outside the house, or you hear some kids playing or something like that. Something disturbs you, or maybe an emotion comes up. Something happens that comes up, something in your brain comes up that brings you out of that Mahamudra meditation. It pulls you down back into your ordinary consciousness, back into your everyday consciousness. And then you say, wow, I didn't realize it, but, it seems like I was there for, quite a spell of time. Maybe it was a minute, maybe it was 5 minutes, maybe it was an hour. Then you realize, oh, I did it. It was there. And what was it like? How can I explain it? And you say, well, I can't explain it, but I can tell you what it was like. And then you have these Vajra-like references to that, to be able to validate, to be able to say that's what it is. So it's through the experience of our teachers, through the experience of the scriptures that are given to us, we can now use that as helpful to be able to understand what that experience that was inexpressible happened. So in other words, we can't make the meditation happen. When everything is rested, the meditation comes by itself. So now it says, this path of perfection, we now become aware of the 5 unafflicted skandhas. So if you remember, we talked about the skandhas before when we were talking about the 12 links of interdependent origination, when we were talking about the 6 realms of samsara, and talking about what it is from the time that we are born and we go through our life sequence and so on until the time that we die. And the 5 skandhas were these heaps, were these compounds of what it is to be a sentient being. That we have a form, that we have feelings, that we have projections, that we have sensations, that we have concentration of consciousness and so on. So these 5 things, so where before we're becoming, aware of those things for the first time, now they become unafflicted. They become part of our nature. And so here it's explained as the moral ethics, the perfect speech of no more training, perfect action, perfect livelihood, the absorption, perfect mindfulness of no more training and perfect absorption, and wisdom awareness, the perfect view of no more training, perfect conception, and perfect effort, full liberation, the perfect full liberation, and seeing the primordial wisdom of full liberation, perfect awareness. So what is this? So what this is now, this is the paramitas. This is the 6 paramitas plus the additional 4 paramitas that we brushed on a little bit. That next time we talk about this, we'll go into a little bit more detail. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th paramitas. It was in the text that you've got. It's in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, but we didn't go into a lot of detail. Now we can go back to it and we can understand it a little bit more. But now we're in the unafflicted skandhas. We're in that perfection level. So one of the things here, if you notice, if you read this, it says here's the speech, the mindfulness, and the view of no more training. Now this is interesting because it can be a trap. There's no more training. The trap is that we get arrogant. We become a pratyeka Buddha. Oh, I've done it. I'm there. I don't need anybody else. I don't need any more training. I don't need anything. And for a period of time, you can be like that. That you've reached this point, where now you're just, everything's open. And you're just experiencing everything for the first time. It's all brand new now. You're looking at it with an enlightened mind, and everything's coming in, and there's nothing to say, there's nothing to do, there's nothing more to read, there's nothing more to study. It's just to just wonder at it all, to just let it all sink in, let it all be there. And so this period of no more learning, but gradually it begins to fade. And we need to be humble during that whole time, to be humble about it. And, I don't know what happened, but whatever happened, I'm enjoying, but I'm not going to let it go, but I'm not going to hold on to it either. I'm not going to become greedy with it. I'm not going to become arrogant about it, have conceit about it. So we fade away. And then we come back into, a lower level of our awareness, but then only to go back into another meditation and to go back into another practice and so on. And we get back to that level maybe. and we sustain that for maybe a longer time, maybe not a longer time. We find that, you know, we're still human. We still have the problems of emotions. We still have all these conditions that are surrounding us that we're in the midst of and so on. So we have to have that humility to be able to allow ourselves to flow with all of this and not be, you know, and not be a discordant in any of this in any way, not to have any of the pridefulnesses or anything like that. So we have to be careful with that. And this is part of our practice. This is part of being on the path. This is part of being in the bhumis of the bodhisattva and everything, is purifying those things, you know, so that we become very, very strong. It's part of the tempering. You know, I've used that example of the yogi who is tempering. Remember that big, you know, the big yogi, and he's got the forceps, and he's holding this piece of metal, and he puts it into the fire, and he gets it red hot, white hot, and he takes it out and he puts it on the anvil, and then he beats it with the hammer, and the sparks go flying. All the impurities are flying out from the piece of metal. And then he takes the metal and he puts it into the water, and it cools down. And then he puts it back in the fire, and he repeats that over and over. And what he's doing, he's tempering that metal so that it becomes supple and you can bend it and it doesn't break. It becomes stable, you know, and you can pliable, and it becomes resilient to the outside pressures and so on. So this is what we're doing with ourselves, you know, to become like that. So we're tempering ourselves. So then it takes us to this next part here in the teaching here. It says the 5 afflicted skandhas, the heap of form, sensation, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousnesses. That's what I was talking about before, what I mentioned before. So it says now, when one perfects all these trainings, there is no need to learn anymore. When one purifies, completely annihilates all the subtle obscurations through the Vajra-like absorption, the all-pervading primordial wisdom blossoms. This is called the all-pervading wisdom. When one realizes this level, there is nothing more to dispel and nothing to add. It transcends all the conceptions of duality and actualizes the primordial mind as such. This is called the perfection and is Buddhahood. So this is what we are dedicating. This is what we are offering. This is what we are giving to all other beings. If we're holding on to it selfishly, it's going to fade very fast. It's going to be very brittle, and it's going to break apart. We're going to lose it. But this is what we are offering to others, this Buddhahood. So of these is the, let me see here. When we talk about the 37 one second. When we talk about the 37 branches of enlightenment that we've been going through in this, and they're delineated in here. So if you haven't noticed them, go back and read this, and you'll see the different sections that are relating to these 37 branches of enlightenment. So the first 7 branches are the perfect mindfulness branch, the perfect discrimination branch, the perfect perseverance branch, the perfect joy branch, the perfect relaxation branch, the perfect absorption branch, and the perfect equanimity branch. And these are listed in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So we're taking this apart, putting it back together again. So everybody needs to do this on their own. You know, so I'm introducing it to you, but this is a study, and this study takes a long time. We've been studying this stuff for a long, long time. Kempo was talking today about Way of the Bodhisattva, and he was talking about the wisdom chapter in there. And he talked about how many times he went through it. And he said the first time he couldn't understand anything. The second time, it started making a little bit of sense, but, it still was a wonder to him. And the third time, it started making a little bit more sense. And the fourth time, and the fifth time, and the sixth time, the seventh time, how many times he's gone through it to be able to understand these very subtle things, So it's incumbent upon us all to want, if you want to get on this path, to be able to understand what all these details are, what all these nuances are. We might say, I'm not ready for that, and that's fine. And you need to stay at the level that you're comfortable with. We talked about that last week and the week before, about remaining, where you're comfortable. But then when things become clear, when things become stable, and you're ready to move to the next level, you know where to go. You know what to do. Oh, now I'm ready for chapter, 10 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation or something like that. I've been spending all this time on chapters 1 through 9. Now, finally, I'm ready to go to chapter 10. So we got to look at the progression and move with the progression and not move too fast. Remain humble. All these things. So this Fivefold Path of Mahamudra then is the path of bodhicitta is number 1, is the path of accumulation, bodhicitta, the virtues and becoming a proper vessel. Then the second part of the path is the deity yoga, the path of application, the effort that we need to make for realization. It teaches us the effort that we need to make for realization. It doesn't happen just by sitting there trying to empty our mind. See how long you can sit there and have no thought. I bet you can't do it for 15 seconds. So, but if we have a way to be able to make an effort to do that, to put us in that direction of being able to do that, and that no thought comes by itself as the meditation, that's what we're talking about. So the deity yoga is that process of helping us to do that. This is what the deities are teaching us. Then the guru yoga is the path of insight. This is the 4 noble truths, the 7 perfection branches, what I just recited to you, the mindfulness, discrimination, and so on. Those are the first parts of the 37 enlightened branches. Is the first part is the 4 noble truths and the 7 perfection branches. And we keep coming back to them. The very first teaching that we gave in Buddhism 101 was the 4 noble truths. And how many times have we gone back to it in all the 101 talks that we've had and so on, and the Buddhism 102 talks? We just keep on going back to it. And it means more to us each time we go back. So this is the guru yoga. So what this is developing, what this is allowing to come up and being able to recognize is this innate wisdom that we have, this innate love, this innate joy, this innate bodhicitta. That's what's innate, Innate means that it's unborn, so pure it's unborn. It's in us all. It's that vibration, it's that fabric that we're all part of. It's inexplicable. We don't have good words for it, but it's that innate, true nature. So recognizing the guru, recognizing that as the guru, that there's the teacher. The teacher's been with you the whole time. Then the Mahamudra is the fourth part. The Mahamudra is the path of meditation, the familiarization, the familiarization, the eightfold path branches, the eightfold path branches, you know, of the right view, the right protection, right conduct, right speech, etc. The familiarization of that, you know, and for those who have been studying and participating in the seven Taras, the supplication of the seven Taras, it says, there's a line in there, it says, we have this awareness of mind. Our mind, wait a minute, it's, excuse me one second. The nature of our mind is Buddha's mind. It is difficult to understand the nature of our mind is Buddha's mind. Seeing nature mind, but not familiarizing with it through practice, we are lost in unwholesome worldly activities. I supplicate Mother Tara of perfect mindfulness, please protect us. We do this through familiarization, through practice. It isn't something we read a couple of times and all of a sudden we just start doing it. No, we have to start doing it. We have to practice it over and over and over again. So this is the Mahamudra, the path of meditation, the familiarization. And then finally is number 5 is the dedication, the path of perfection, nirvana. That we are doing this now, we are in dualistic nature, but we're doing it for the benefit of other beings. We're becoming a mensch. We're becoming a human being, a complete human being who is there to help other beings, always. Never sometimes, not when I feel like it, not when there's something in it for me, not when I have nothing else to do, but all the time. This is the path of purification. So all this together is chapter 18. This is the method of the aspects of the 5 paths. The antidote, this is the antidote to not knowing the method of practice for achieving Buddhahood. So if you say, I want to attain Buddhahood, how do I do it? Say, well, you got to practice. Well, what do I practice? Well, you practice chapter 18 and all the stuff that came before it, because all that was all practice on how to attain Buddhahood, of achieving Buddhahood. So there's no secret to it. There's no, somebody coming and laying hands on you and all of a sudden, you become Buddha. It's not like that. You got to work for it. So what do you got to do better? Okay. So anybody got anything to say?
Yeah, quick question, Lance. When you were talking about the point where you start doing, good acts just for the sake of doing it, are you still experiencing duality in this phase? You haven't collapsed
Sure.
duality at that point, or you're?
We're aware of duality.
Mm-hmm.
We're aware of duality, absolutely, because we're still human beings, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
We're still human beings. So You know, at what level human being are we? We could be an ordinary human being. We could be a practitioner level. We could be a yogin level. We could be a bodhisattva level. You know, are we going to be, can we be a Buddha level? Well, it's possible, but let's be realistic about things. So yes, we will be aware of it. We may have glimpses of this. There is a book, I don't know if I told you about this, the book called Glimpse After Glimpse by Sogyal Rinpoche. This would be, a couple of you guys have it. And it is a great book. And I read it every day for 6 years. And it's a great book because glimpse after glimpse, glimpse after glimpse, we're looking at Buddhahood. We're realizing it with ourselves. So yes, so we are aware, we are mindful of our dualistic nature and the dualistic nature of things around us. But we bring it up, we become transcendent of that, and we try not to be limited by that. That's what we work for, to not be limited. We transcend. We're still breathing, we're still human beings. But meanwhile, we're trying to be as pure as we can, like a Buddha, like a bodhisattva, like a yogi. Whatever we can manage, whatever we can do. Does that make sense?
That does, yeah. I guess my follow-up question would be, when you're doing these, when you are doing these acts of goodness or
virtue,
how are you, at what point can you tell for sure if it's if you're doing it to just reinforce your ego or separate self of this idea of like, oh, okay, yeah, I feel good, I did that, or when it genuinely is like, oh no, I did this selflessly? Like, is there a question you ask yourself to filter that, or is it just something you will know when it's happening? Like it just is an automatic thing where like, oh no, like,
well,
there's no
it's
thinking.
It's a process, you know. So the Eightfold Path, when you sit down and you do your meditation and you go through the prayers and you know what you did will come up in your mind. You know, if you've got a question about it, it's going to pop up in your mind. If you have a feeling of satisfaction about it, is it a selfish satisfaction, or is it a satisfaction, an empathetic joy, such as in bodhicitta, that someone had great benefit from it, and they themselves it relieved some of their frustration. It was a blessing to them. So it's through our self-examination of this over and over again. We don't stop doing that. We're always looking at ourselves.
Okay.
And make
Thank
a
you.
comment to that too, Lance.
Sorry.
May I make a comment to that too?
Please, yeah.
I think to what Kai was saying, personally, I think as long as we're not attached, when you're doing some virtuous acts, as long as you're not attached to the outcome of it, I think you're doing out of pure, like, love for someone. Like you're just giving someone, but you're not expecting anything in return. That's when you're experiencing everything of being of one taste, just to bring back to what we were talking a little bit before. What do you think, Lance?
Well, I think that's right. The question becomes, does it stand the test of time?
Right. It has to be stable too.
It has to be stable. And what we, the way we rationalize things for this time and space, it may be true for us now, but at some period of time in the future, when we have a little bit more training, a little bit more experience, we may view that situation a little differently. So again, we have to maintain that humility, that we're always subject to change. You were going to say something, Adrian?
Are you saying that when you have a different level of realization, all this perception can change, right?
Sure.
Just keep the mind open.
That's right. Keep
Right.
yourself humble and keep your mind open. That's right. Yep. Yep. Because being ignorant means you don't even know what you don't know. So don't you think that's a good way to be?
Definitely.
I mean, because Buddhism, at its very core, and maybe we haven't said this for a long time, Buddhism is not a religion. Some people may consider it a religion, but it's not a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy of yourself, purifying yourself to be the best that you can be, and to be able to transcend all your defilements and so on, so that you can help other beings. And through that, we become what we call the Bodhisattva. We ultimately become what we call the Buddha, and we don't come back into this form body. The Bodhisattva is in this form body, but the Buddha is not in this form body. There may be a few who are so perfect at this time, and even then we would have doubts, and maybe they themselves may have doubts as to their perfection. Maybe not, But the point is that we are going through this progression, and to accept that. So we see ourselves not as a divine being, as a supreme being. We see everything as just being nature, just being natural. If you want to call that divine, well, that's a relative word. It's an empty word. All our language is empty. So why would you want to do this? Michael, you want to speak to that?
Well, I think we shouldn't have to answer that question. Anything we do should be for the benefit of other beings. And so why would we do that? That's right action. That's doing the right thing. Am I wrong?
I think so. Are you happy doing that?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I wouldn't. I imagine sometimes we wouldn't know that's happening, because it should be natural. So it shouldn't be anything that we get to observe. And if it is, maybe there are outcomes that we're linking to our behavior, like Adrian says. And that's when it moves away from being selfless. But I think we would be happy less about our series of actions that are directed in one way or another, and what sort of motivations, and more with how we're feeling close to our true nature. I mean, it should just be a recognition that we're in resonance, I think, instead of now analyzing our behaviors.
What if Zara, say I came to you with $5 million and say, Zara, give up Buddhism and you can have this $5 million.
She'll give it back to you, Lance, because she's got more than that. Just kidding.
Oh, Adrian's so funny. Is that a question you want me to ask, or is that rhetorical?
Well, I think it's a question. You know, what I'm trying to do is to get everybody to look at what would make them happy. If you had $5 million, would that make you happy? And if that and getting that $5 million meant that you had to give up your Buddhism, would you do it?
No. Well, I will say, I can say that I could have answered that question at 30 years old comfortably and said absolutely not, because I have relative perspective now on what you have to give up to earn that, or to have earned that. You lose quality of life in other ways, like something as simple as eating dinner with your family without taking work phone calls. That's an easy no for me at this point in my life, because of my life experiences today. That it's just not worth money. My happiness is not worth $5 million. It's priceless to me.
So the happiness that you find in Buddhism, you're finding that happiness in Buddhism?
Absolutely. Yes. So as a concept, happiness, and then the items that bring that to me, and including this practice and this paradigm, this philosophy, are priceless to me. I would not put a value on them. So that would be a no, thank you. Proceed to the next buyer.
Right. Tom, what would you say about a question like that?
I don't know. I mean, is that going to benefit others? I'll give up myself to benefit others. Is that 5 million going to help others more than me? Give it. I'll give it up.
Is that the question?
Is there anything that you would consider to be, you know, a better life? That, you know, you would aspire to have a better life, you know, in this life or the next life, you know, that wouldn't have anything, you know, what would that be?
I mean,
let me ask you this way. What's your aspiration for another life?
I'm inspired to really help, you know, others. It's just, you know, if it's at the cost of me, a cost of my life, or a cost of, you know, whatever it takes, you know, it's because in the end, it's why are we really doing this? It's to benefit others. You know, if we end up in hell, if there is a hell, as long as we're helping others, it's okay. I'll deal with that.
Tom, let me engage with you on your response, because your response is markedly different from mine, and I want to engage in a dialogue with you. So for me, I find, at least where I am in my journey right now.
I'll repeat that because it broke up when you spoke.
I think I hear an echo.
Yeah. Maybe if we turn off our microphones and let her speak, because she's going to say something important.
Oh, okay. So I was, what I was saying was my response, or Tom, your response is markedly different from mine. And I'm obviously, I recognize where I am on this journey is, I would consider a novice. And so I maybe ignorantly describe, like, I would not want that $5 million because I want to preserve the things that fundamentally are integral to my happiness. So right now, this journey, the Buddhism is, and that in doing so, like the ability to have love for myself and prioritize that happiness for myself first, I'm able to then be better at helping other people if I maintain that integrity by not taking the 5 million. When I listen to you to describe your response, it gives me a moment to pause and really do a deep dive into your response and think about what you're saying. So I'm happy I heard your response, and I'm questioning my own response right now and wonder if I'm really off with how I'm thinking about preserving my happiness is necessary.
Well, what do you think he said? What do you think he said?
Right. I'm hearing words, right, but they're being filtered through my brain and through my what I believe these words mean. I think he's willing, almost like if you'll allow this and forgive the use of this word, because it's not intended to describe Tom, but almost like a martyrdom where he's willing to just say, okay, I'll just give all this up and put myself last in order to do this if it helps everyone else accept myself. And so then I would question, is that effective if you're not taking care of yourself on the journey? Because maybe really you're more effective if you are happy over time versus having like a lump sum of 5 million. Maybe you do more if you are healthy and happy with your spiritual journey versus taking the 5 million. So that's how I heard like he would be willing to let go of that. Tom, am I mishearing you or?
No, you have it pretty much right. I mean, I'll put myself last, here. It's okay, it's okay. Like a lot of the teachings, like it says, what does Kempo say sometimes? You're a loser here on this planet, in this worldly planet, but in the end, you are a winner because you're letting go of yourself for the benefit of others. And, if that 5 million is going to help other people eat and survive, and hopefully, maybe one of those people will start looking for themselves and realize that, hey, there's more to life than just this, and it's worth it.
So you're saying that through your effort as being a Buddhist is the
Sure.
way they would see that. They wouldn't see that if they had a portion of that $5 million. You're not saying.
Oh no, I'm not going to give them the cash. I'm going to, it's like a hungry person. What good is Dharma to a hungry person? I mean, you can tell them Dharma all they want. They're hungry. They want to eat. So you got to first feed them, and clothe them and give them some shelter, and then maybe you can start talking about some Dharma to them. But, but I'm willing to risk that,
It's interesting, and all the things that I've read and all the things I've heard, I've never heard them use, the idea of sacrifice.
Mhm.
Because of the two benefits. When we talk about bodhicitta, there's two benefits. There's the benefit of helping other beings, but then there's the other benefit that at the same time we are helping ourselves, that we are achieving enlightenment through this, that through the activity of the compassion is one of the rights, if you will, one of the rights, R-I-T-E-S, one of the rights, one of the methods to attain enlightenment. You wouldn't attain enlightenment if you didn't have the compassion. And the compassion is the act of doing for other beings. So it's not thought of in terms of a sacrifice. I think the Judeo-Christian has a very strong way of talking about sacrifice. The Western philosophy, I should say, talking about sacrifice. But I think in the East, the Buddhism at least, has a more evolved way of approaching that.
So Lance,
No, go ahead, Michael.
I suspect that given the sort of ephemeral and dubious nature of what we call ourself, compared to that ocean of being that we belong to or that we reside in, that any good things that we do are going to be they're going to be good things for the Gestalt, right? And and my thoughts about myself, I could be wrong that I actually have a self. I mean, it's dubious that I have anything beyond this samsaric world. I mean, anything beyond these emotions and thoughts and brain waves that are swirling around. There's nothing left to survive. There's nothing there. But what is there is that larger beingness that is our place with others. Am I off base there?
No, I think you're right. Let me ask Gary. Gary, what do you think about this conversation?
Well, I don't care about the 5 million. I wouldn't take 5 million or any other amount. There's certainly a point in my life where I probably would have. But what the path that I'm on, if I may call it that, is one that I simply wouldn't give up, because I've been in other places, and of course I've known people with a lot more than 5 million, and some of them were some of the most miserable people I ever saw in my life. And I wouldn't want to be them. No amount of money was enough. They were always talking about more. There are exceptions to that rule, I guess, in the world, people who are known benefactors of good, as far as I know, from what I know of what they do. But if you're thinking about what you would give up for an amount of money, then what you got in Buddhism, or if it's something else, is not of value to you anyway. If money is even something to consider. You find that thinking is certainly not original with me. It's embedded. It's embedded in religions and philosophies all over the world, and including Judeo-Christian. Even though sometimes the practice is distorted to glorify the pursuit of things, whether it's money or something else. No, it's just the 5 million would mean nothing to me at this point.
Okay, let me ask Kay something. What aspect of it is lifestyle, would you say? You know, what is the essence of the motivation? Is there a lifestyle? How would you discuss that?
You mean for people's responses? Is what's the motivation? Is it where they're currently at?
To be a spiritual person, to be a Buddhist, you know, because we're talking about Buddhism, but you know, is the lifestyle, is there a lifestyle that is a motivation, or is there something else that is a motivation?
Sorry to interrupt, Lance. Can you poke your audio connection, please? You're really faint.
Oh, really? All right, I'm gonna change my battery then. I'm just gonna turn off the microphone for a minute. So go ahead, Kay, please talk.
I guess if I'm hearing the question right, I would say it's lifestyle. I would say that we all have basic needs that we have to take care of. But I mean, I guess I'm speaking for myself here, but no, I personally don't. I think the motivation for this path, I don't know, and I was just listening to a discussion about this, comes through some sense of grace that's maybe not, we have the karma for it, or I don't know, it's not something that necessarily we can, if I understood your question correctly, I would say that the motivation is something else. It's not like this material pursuit, if that makes sense.
Okay. Does that microphone sound better now?
Yes.
Do you think that people should enjoy the lifestyle of being a spiritual person, of being a Buddhist? Is there an enjoyment quality to it?
Yeah, I would think so, especially in the beginning. Yeah, I would think that I'm not going to say that the whole path is like you're floating on air, feeling, great all the time, because I know, just speaking from my own experience, in the beginning, it's pretty rocky when you start questioning beliefs you've had and all of that, the layers of conditioning that we have from our environment and the emotions and feelings. So, but at some point, I would say that, especially in the beginning, there's my experience, there should be some point of it where you're like, this is still what I want, no matter what comes. So there's some level of enjoyment in that, and that it shouldn't be so much pushing, like where it's painful. Now there's parts I feel like that you have to go through processes that are going to be that way, but the whole thing all the way through, I don't know, it could be my ignorance because it's not my direct experience, but I'd say at some point there's part of it that needs to be, there's some relief and enjoyment in.
Okay. Do you have any other thought about, this idea of making a choice, to take on this life, for, what, we would think, would be the rest of our lives. Once we start with something like this, it becomes who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like this is something I'm very much passionate about and very much focused on. But then it's interesting to me because everyone close to me immediately, I don't really have anyone that, like, they're like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Like, I'm really the crazy one in the group. They're like, okay. So, yeah, I can just, and it's just interesting to me. It was like, wow, everyone's at their own place there. And for me, at least, it's just something that I don't even want to claim ownership. Oh, I did this, or this is my thing. It just is something that I am very naturally curious about and focused on. So I know these are tough questions because I'm only speaking from my limited experience, but
Zara,
that's
are you saying that are you saying that your friends or whoever you're talking about are not accepting of this, or are they just indifferent, or it seems to me you're saying that they expressed something about involvement?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say most people are indifferent. Well, like my husband, it thinks he's like, wow, she's on a woo-woo kick. Like he doesn't, he's very goal oriented and very much about, and I don't want to say this I don't want this to come across like arrogant or rude or anything like that, because it's everyone's in their own process, but he's very goal oriented with material outcomes. And not to say that I'm not, it's just that back to that question of, would you take the 5 million, or would you, and renounce this and then take the 5 million? Yeah, I don't think I would, I'm not drawn to that. And so, yeah, like the people, most of my friends, I think I have maybe one or two friends, and at least my sister, that I can talk to about this kind of stuff, but I pretty much have learned to keep my mouth shut talking about this. It's like, Lance, I think you said it earlier, you were like, don't tell people, like, when you're doing it, oh, this is a virtuous deed, or just you're on this path, or mention anything, because they won't understand. And I've even had people get hostile just having these types of conversations. So I've learned to just, unless I'm in a certain group, to talk about it.
I get that. I've had some of that too. But on the other hand, I had a friend I told about it with an old colleague, still a friend that I don't see much now because of the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him about it, and I was shocked when he said, "Well, actually, I'm studying the Baha'i faith." And the last person in the world, I mean, a profound atheist, this person, a good friend of mine, he said, "Yeah, I'm looking too." He said, "I get it."
That's really great.
There are people that I really don't talk about it much. My wife knows, and she understands spirituality. She's not interested in pursuing this particularly, but she is someone who has always been a helper. She has been a coach and a therapist and a doer. So she believes in anything that pushes that sort of compassion and empathy for other people, even if this is not her thing. But there are people who there are people who will tell you you are going to hell if you're not subscribing to this faith or that faith, whatever their tradition is. But part of what Buddhism is to me is letting that pass right through me and being unaffected by it. I knew that something, at least in the beginnings of it, was happening to me when things like that passed right through me. And I didn't even feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I just felt, so you give up peace of mind and calmness for $5 million or any other amount? The answer is just simply no.
And I think it really depends, if I may add something to
I was
that.
going to ask you something, but go ahead. Yeah, comment, please.
No, so go ahead, Lance. I can.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. You had a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Gary nailed it. And going back to your question, Lance, if with the $5 million, and if you would give up, Buddhism, I think if you really dissect the question, to my personal level, what I would do with that, let's say that I would take the $5 million and I would renounce Buddhism. I would erase, all the friends that I have here in the Sangha, Lance and Gary and Zara and Kai and everybody. And, I'm not going to have the books, the prayer books and everything like that. But the truth is that, in my opinion, in my experience, is that you're always going to be on the path, on the search. That $5 million and what somebody, is going to say to you that I'm going to take Buddhism away from you, that's never going to happen, because nobody can ultimately destroy the reality, the search, your Buddha nature. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you're after. And the search for that is always going to be there. In my experience, I can share this, I'm within the Sangha, when I was in Romania, when I was in high school, I kind of ran away from home. I just took off and I went to a monastery, to an Orthodox monastery in the mountains. And I, stayed there without anybody knowing about me, my doings for months, in the winter. And nobody knew where I was. The teachers in high school were going crazy. Where's Adrian? What's going on? But what I realized there, I was never a church going person, but all of a sudden I decided that, I'm just going to take off, and I went to the mountains, and I was there kind of like in a retreat. And after I got out of that, I felt special. It was something special. That search was always there. When I came to the United States, I knew that for some reason I have to be here. And my reason was, now I see that I had to discover this. I had to discover Buddhism. And when I came here, I met my friend, Mihai. He was from Romania, and I told you about him, Lance, and he was into this. At that point, he was planning on a retreat in Vermont, and he was kind of debating if he wants to go, and he was kind of on the fence. And I kept going to him, and I was like, Mihai, let's go to Vermont. And I kept just asking him until he got in the car. We went to Vermont to the retreat center there, to Milarepa Retreat Center, and we stayed there. And from that point on, I was just kind of I was into this. And now it kind of begins to crystallize that this is what I'm looking for. This is it. I'm on the path. Now I see the path, and I have to make everything into the path. So back to your question, it's no matter what everybody would say or try to do to you, you're always going to be on the path. They can give me the $5 million, and I'll say, okay, I'll renounce Buddhism. I'll take the money, I'll buy all the Buddha statues at the drinking center so that 100 more people can benefit of Buddhism. And I'll say, I'm renouncing this, but in my heart, there's always going to be a path towards enlightenment. And as long as, I'm doing that, I think I'll be good. What we're doing now has a very articulated way of how to get there. And that would be the only reason I would probably not give this up. But inside my heart, I know that I'm on my way there.
Okay, that was very good. Thank you. One of the things that has been coming to my mind lately is dogma and doctrine. And one of the prayers of the Seven Taras, they use the word dogma, that we are deceived by delusory philosophies of dogma, of things that we do, practice and dogma. So it's been making me think about that. And, so does anybody have any views? I looked up what dogma means because I wanted to be sure that I understood that. And dogma speaks to an absolute precept. If you don't do this, you're going to wind up going to hell, something like that. And there's no question that you're going to go to hell, but in a doctrine, there can be a teaching that talks about, a particular practice or something, but it doesn't talk in those absolute kind of terms. So does anybody have any thoughts about that, doctrine and dogma, as it relates to Buddhism?
I think for me, coming from like a very dogmatic family, like where like there was this polar opposite of Christianity and later like Islamic stuff, and then just being exposed to it, I recognized as I found this philosophy, I didn't realize how powerful, because a lot of this gets laid down when you're young, but the dogmatic belief, how it impacts you and governs behavior and emotions. And I am just very thankful, and it's something I still struggle with, but I am thankful to have found something that is not dogmatic. It is, I know it sounds really weird and you probably can't relate unless you come from a household where it's like you fire and brimstone at some point. So I personally am very thankful that it's a huge relief to my heart and soul to know that there is something out there other than a dogmatic tradition that still invites you to seek, and that you don't have to just go through a dogmatic controlling your behavior, like don't do this or don't do that or don't do that, like that. It's very much a mentality, like feeling enslaved in that way of like, oh wow, like I don't know. So for me personally, it's been just there's times where I'm just like, oh, okay, you can breathe. Like we're not talking about hell right now. We're not.
So does the dogma, does that bring up, that things are very literal, that things are taken in what they say as being very literal, whereas maybe in Buddhism the doctrine is very has a lot of metaphor, has a lot of simile in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that specific,
Yeah.
and allows you to have the experience.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
is that
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I'm not the most articulate. So absolutely. Yes, that sums it up. And just as an adult, like not even just so much in my childhood, even exploring these other routes, like going to the masjid, going, to church and whatever. Yeah, even as an adult, like I could feel these things is exactly what you were just describing. Like, oh wow, it's like very literal, and it just feels like too restrictive. The literal interpretation, it can become like, for me, it wasn't for me.
Is there an element of guilt that's built into that?
That I feel guilt from walking away from that.
No. Does that dogma make you feel guilty?
Yes, there's a lot. Well, I feel like you're constantly enshrouded in shame, guilt, and fear. And I was just sick of feeling that. I don't know. It just did not feel good. I was like, well, why don't we just kill ourselves now? And I don't mean that like being funny. Like there were certain points where I was just like, if we're all just going to hell, like, why are we here? Like, is this a game? Like it just, there were very dark periods with this kind of dogmatic stuff that I was like, yeah, like it just never felt, like, why are we doing this if it's all about pain and punishment? So yeah, guilt, fear, punishment, all of that.
Well, Michael and Tom, you both have been practicing, Eastern philosophy, for a number of years, before you came to Dharma Surya and everything. Were there elements of guilt in the way, or the feeling of dogma that and that made you feel guilty if you didn't adhere to the teachings? Michael, you go first.
No. I mean, I come from a Christian background, and Catholic guilt is, I probably still carry some Catholic guilt with me, because in the Catholic mind, we're born guilty. Call it original sin. But in the two traditions that I practice within prior to this one, no. I mean, I think in whatever Buddhist tradition that you're in, I think we have to take it for granted that just for the fact that we're all here, on this Zoom call, as it were, and we're having these conversations, means that we've been investing in this for a long time, for many times, probably. So I don't think we really have a choice. We might come into it with sort of ignorant, we might have forgotten some things since we last were excited about it in a previous life, perhaps, but I think we were on the path before we were born, so it's not really optional. Guilt doesn't come into my relationship with practices.
Okay, Tom, how about you?
Well, I've only known Buddhism. Both my parents were Buddhists. I was born and raised in a predominantly Buddhist country. As a child, going up into the monasteries and staying up there for weeks at a time. And, just being with the monks and stuff, I was always, told that, you always do for others, you live for others, everything is for others. And that's the thing. I mean, in Buddhism, there's no fire and brimstone, There can be, in the Theravada and the more disciplined views, but it's more of a, to keep you on the right path, it's not so much that, you're going to end up in hell and you're going to end up as a hungry ghost, but that's, both my parents, being, like I said, being both Buddhist, and it's always just, just be kind to others, be a decent human being, because everybody wants the same thing you do, happiness. That's it. We're no different. We're all the same. We are all the same. When we get cut, we all bleed red. We all eat the same food. We all drink the same water. Just be a decent human being. That's it.
Okay.
So as far as, dogmas and stuff, I've been exposed to much of that, because like I said, I've been very fortunate.
Okay. Thank you. We only got a few minutes left. So, Gary and Zara and Adrian, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this conversation right now?
Tom, that's really cool. I just learned a cool fact about you. That's That's interesting, you know, because like listening to all of you guys, like, and obviously this is just human nature. You start making assumptions about other people based on, you know, just listening, right? Like like assumptions. Like Adrian just shared something about his life, and I've known Adrian for a while, and I was just shocked at what he just disclosed to us. But that's really cool. I thank you for sharing that about your life and where you've come from. That's really neat. I don't have anything to add, Lance, of substance. I just wanted to make that comment to Tom.
Well, that
And
was very good. Thank you.
I think I don't want to say that you know about dogmas and kind of like you know where I grew up. It's kind of like a mixed feeling for me because you know the dogmatic views of the Orthodox Church in Romania definitely they were pointing always to guilt. Like you know if you're going to do this, you're going to hell. Like I grew up with my grandmother not allowing you to use scissors on the weekend because that was a sin, or any sharp objects. So that was some serious stuff, but that was good for us because you know everybody was resting during the weekends, and we're kind of like you know playing, you know, with the other kids, and in the church, it was not. It was always like so. It was again a mixed feeling. It was so beautiful to go to those churches and monasteries in Romania because you would go to this like it's a few kilometers away from my house, and it's this beautiful monastery 600 years old. You know you can still see the paintings. It's pretty famous in Europe, you know, and you can still smell the sense of incense like of hundreds of years that has been burned in that monastery by monks, generations of monks. And you go in there and it's kind of like so beautiful. You know, you go outside, the monks have like all this like flowers on the outside. Everything is so groomed, everything is so nice. But then, you know, you hear the you know the abbot talking about like, you know, if you do this, if you you know of course you're going to hell, you know, but then again you have that sense of freedom when you go back into the building itself is so beautiful. So it's kind of like a mixed feeling, but the idea is the dogma itself definitely was, you know, pointing towards that, and not, you know, necessarily to look into yourself and find, you know, what the truth is inside your heart.
Okay, so are you seeing? Is everybody seeing a degree of tolerance that is built into into Buddhism? You know, if people are having trouble or confused, whatever, you know, there's tolerance, there's compassion for them and help for them, and not being judgmental, not being prejudiced, you know, is our key points, you know, and those things become teachers for us. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy that we had this conversation, and that you know this chapter is an important chapter, and I hope that everybody has time to, you know, reflect on this. If you need the text, you know, the notes, we've been including those in our emails to you, so you can get them if you lost them or something, and maybe take up the book. You know, we're going to go into a study of the book Learning Buddhism soon, and which is based on the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So it's going to be a while before we actually get to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation and take it up. And Kempo was actually talking about making a teaching of Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So I don't know whether he's going to follow through with that, but it's a big commitment to do that. It takes a long time. So whether or not, if he does that, if you guys would want to join in something like that, it would be quite beneficial, I think. So next week we'll continue, and we'll go into chapter 19, which then becomes the 10 Bodhisattva Bhumis. So these are the highest paths of purification before one becomes a Buddha. So, so all this is accruing to the time that we can launch ourselves, that we can make the leap into our Buddha nature, to be becoming Buddha. Okay, anybody got anything else you want to close with before we do our dedication prayers? Okay, then Adrian, will you do the dedication, and we'll start page 18, 19 and go through to page 22, please.
Hey, Lance, one last thing.
Sure.
I just wanted to say thanks for these wonderful classes that you allow us to engage in and to learn from. For you to give your wisdom, allowing yourself being so unselfish. That's a very, very powerful thing you're doing. And you know what? Thanks.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we're all doing it together. So thank you. Okay.
Lineage dedication prayer. Dorje chang tilopa naropa marpa milarepa dharma lord gampopa pagmodrupa lord brinkungpa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent precious mind, where is unborn, may it arise, where is born, may not decline, but ever increase, higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessings of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessings of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. The Korma prayer. By the virtues collected in 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Rikumpa Ratnashri, whose omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgun. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Idams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratikya Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors, hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for a given moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om. Ah. Om. Om. Ah. Om. Om,
uh,
home, and my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the enlightened ones.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Bless your delay. Thank you. May it all be auspicious. May all beings and activities be auspicious for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we'll see you next week, I hope, and maybe tomorrow and maybe Monday and so on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lance.